So yesterday for reading, we read Buffalo Woman. Today we're going to read Buffalo Hunt to learn a little bit more about our Native Americans. Yesterday, the story, I hope you realized, was a fiction story. It was a tale that came from part of the Native American culture and what they believed. Okay, and today we're going to read something. It's going to be different. Okay, but you're going to have to try to find some similarities and some differences between them. Differences will probably be easy. Still keeping in mind what the author's purpose is and what they're trying to do and why they wrote this story. Yesterday, you should have gotten a theme or a message from that story. Today, you might not. All right? Okay, this one is called Buffalo Hunt. And this is you'll see, it's a longer story. Lots of it. I'm only actually going to read the first chapter for you. Okay, this is a picture. It is from the National Museum of American Art from the Smithsonian. It says, Buffalo Bull Grazing on the Prairie. George Catlin, between 1830 and 1836, Catlin traveled through unmapped Indian country and made more than 500 dramatic paintings. A gift from the Great Spirit. Over blazing campfires on winter nights, Indian storytellers spoke of the buffalo. They told tales of buffalo giants and buffalo ghosts, of buffalo that changed magically into men, just like just like Buffalo Woman over there, right? Of children who were raised by buffalo and understood their language. In olden times, it was said buffalo used to eat Indians. They ate so many Indians that a legendary figure called Old Man had to put a stop to it. He organized a race between the buffalo and the Indians to decide who should eat whom, and the Indians won. On the Great Plains of North America, every Indian tribe had a rich and ready store of buffalo tales and legends. According to the Comanche, buffalo came from gigantic caves somewhere on the windswept ranges of the Texas Panhandle. Each spring, the Great Spirit sent throngs of buffalo from those hidden caves onto the open plains as a gift to the Indian people. Up north, the Blackfoot said that a lake in Canada was the place where the buffalo began. They were born beneath the water in the darkest depths of the lake. If you could visit that sacred spot on the right night at exactly the right time, you could hear an eerie rumbling coming from the middle of the lake. Then you would see the buffalo rise out of the water and crowd onto the shore, their shaggy fur wet and dripping, their curved horns gleaming in the moonlight. To the Plains Indian, the buffalo, or American bison, was the most important animal on earth. This snorting, lumbering beast provided almost everything the Indians needed to stay alive. The buffalo kept their bellies full and their bodies warm. It supplied raw material for their weapons, tools, ornaments, and toys. The rhythm of their daily lives was ruled by the coming and goings of the great buffalo herds. It is little wonder that the Indians worshiped the buffalo as a sacred animal. Before and after every hunt, they praised the spirit of the buffalo and thanked him for giving his meat. Men, women, and children carried buffalo-shaped rocks and fossils for good luck. They believed in the powerful magic of buffalo dreams. When they died, they hoped to go to a happy hunting ground in the sky where buffalo flourished. Looking into the night sky, the Pawnee believed that the Milky Way was formed by dust left behind by the spirit buffalo. As recently as 150 years ago, countless millions of buffaloes still roam the prairies and plains. They ranged from the Mississippi River westward to the Rockies and from Canada down to the Rio Grande. Native American hunters had been stalking the animals for many thousands of years. During most of that time, the Indians had neither horses nor guns. They hunted on foot, and they killed their prey with stone-tipped arrows and spears. They knew how to creep up on a grazing herd, how to surround the buffalo, and how to drive them into corrals or stampede them over cliffs. Without horses, the Indians had to travel on foot whenever they moved their encampments. Back then, they used shaggy dogs as pack animals to help carry their teepees and other belongings. Sometimes on a long journey, the dogs would grow tired and begin to droop and lag and hang their tongues. Then someone would cry, "Buffalo ahead, fresh meat in plenty," and the dogs would bound forward as though they had just set out. Later the Indians would remember that era as their dog days. The first horses were brought to North America by Spanish explorers in the 1500s. Within a century or so, runaway horses had drifted northward from Spanish settlements in Mexico and were roaming the plains in wild herds. The Indians learned to capture and tame those wild horses, and the horses changed their lives. Now they could travel long distances to find the buffalo. They could chase the herds and kill the choicest animals. And with pack horses, they could carry bigger teepees and more possessions with them as they traveled across the plains. In time, the Indians became some of the world's finest horsemen, experts at hunting and fighting on horseback. This is from the Thomas Gilcrease Institute of American History and Art in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's a picture of a Native American catching a wild horse. I think it's by that same artist. Is it George Catlin? Yeah, the same artist we saw on the first page. When white trappers and traders began to visit the Great Plains in the early 1800s, about 250,000 Indians were living in the region. They belonged to some 24 distinct tribes, each with its own language and customs. Many of these tribes had migrated from the woodlands of the east, but only a few, like the Pawnee of Kansas and Nebraska, still practiced the old arts of farming and fishing. Most of the Plains Indians had given up the settled life of farmers and fishermen to follow the buffalo herds. They spent the winter in sheltered camps, but in spring they folded their teepees and roamed the plains. They hunted other animals besides the buffalo, of course, deer, antelope, elk, and an occasional bear, but buffalo meat was their staple food. Buffalo hunting their main occupation. A Plains tribe was made up of many small, independent bands. Once or twice a year, all the bands belonging to a tribe would assemble for a great religious ceremony, a tribal council, or a communal hunt. But mostly the bands moved out on their own. Each band had its own encampment or village, and each band hunted in a different part of the tribal territory. Hunting was a man's responsibility. Every able-bodied boy was taught that he should become a fearless hunter and warrior. Small boys ran about yip-yapping in play hunts, dreaming of the day when they would be big enough to ride after a herd of stampeding buffalo. A successful hunter could provide for many people. He became a man of influence, entitled to honors and privileges. Women were responsible for putting the buffalo and other game to good use. It was a woman's job to skin and butcher the buffalo, to preserve the meat and tan the hides. As Indian girls grew up, they learned from their mothers and grandmothers the art of transforming a dead buffalo into 1,000 practical and useful objects. The buffalo was the biggest animal on the plains. A full-grown bull stood 6 feet tall at the humped shoulders and weighed a ton or more. That's 2,000 pounds, guys. An angry bull could stab a bear to death. He could toss a wolf so high into the air that the wolf would be killed by the fall. While buffalo were somewhat dim-sighted, they could hear the faintest sounds and smell enemies from 3 miles away. And when they sensed danger, they moved fast. A bull or cow could wheel about on its slim hind legs and run as fast as a horse. When a whole herd stampeded, the earth trembled. Okay, so here's another picture of that same artist down here. And it says Comanche feats of horsemanship. Wow. And you can see this guy, he's hanging off the side of his horse fighting. And here's another picture. This one's from a different person. We'll see, this one's at the Joslyn Art Museum in Nebraska. This one was in the New York Historical Society. And this one says, Bodmer visited this encampment of Assiniboine, I don't know how you say it, Assiniboine Indians on June 30th, 1833. The teepee in the foreground The dwelling of a chief has large bear figures painted on the side. So that was the chief. I wonder if the bear on the outside had something to do with his name and what he was named after. They did that a lot too. Okay, here's another picture. It says buffalo and elk on the upper Missouri. See all the buffalo. And here's the elk over here. It says white explorers were astonished at the size of the herds they saw as they crossed the Great Plains. There were times when buffalo stretched endlessly across the countryside as far as the eye could see. Artist George Catlin described these herds when he traveled west during the 1830s to study and paint the Indians. Buffalo graze in immense herds and almost incredible numbers, he wrote, and they roam over vast tracts of country. No one really knows how many buffalo roamed the prairies and plains before the white man came. The Indians thought there were enough buffalo to last forever. It seemed impossible that they could ever disappear.